Energetics is the study of energy, and today I'm going to talk about that and why I very much recommend that you use it to give yourself a leg up in your fiction writing process, in your author success, all of it. I'm going to talk about what it is, why it's important, and how it has completely changed the way that I look at writing and publishing and being successful as an author. So if you are at all curious about it, stay tuned. This is the episode for you. I'm going to define what energetics is because I know some people don't really know what I mean when I say that. And then we're going to go into all the ways that it can help you in your writing. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so I am big on energetics. I have actually gotten really, really into it in the last year, maybe a little more than a year. Before that, I wasn't that into it. I wasn't actively practicing it. I was always very curious about it. And then once I started getting into it, I very quickly jumped in with both feet, and it rocked my world, and then it really changed my world, including when it comes to my writing. Okay, so what are energetics? As I said before the intro, energetics is just the study of energy. It is the way that energy behaves and the way that we as human beings can manipulate energy to make our lives a little bit smoother and a little bit easier. It's the kind of thing that used to be considered very woo-woo and very new age. But now it's becoming more mainstream. So things that fall under the umbrella of energetics would be meditation, manifestation, the law of attraction, mindset. People talk about vibrating higher, high energy versus low energy, light energy versus dark energy, that sort of thing. All of those fall under the umbrella of energetics. And it's funny because it used to be called New Age. People would say it's very New Agey, which is really funny because it's not new. It's actually very ancient. Like the ancient Buddhists were practicing this thousands of years ago, right? And so it's funny that in the 70s and 80s, people started calling it New Age. It's just kind of funny. But the thing is, back then, the reason that it was seen as very woo-woo is because it seemed like a theory. This is an invisible element. We cannot see this energy. We can see results of the energy, but we cannot see the energy itself. We can feel it. Emotion is a form of energy. So we definitely feel the energy through either emotion or sensation. But now, in the year in which we live, 2024, heading really quickly into 2025, science actually can measure it to a lot greater degree than it used to be able to. We've developed the technology to be able to observe these things on a microscopic level, or even smaller. So that's why it's becoming so mainstream, things like meditation and manifestation, because people are starting to realize the advantages of using those, and they feel the effects of them. So how does this help you in your writing? Well, a lot of it I've talked about before, so I will just touch on here. But as I've learned more and more about energetics, I realized that the study of energetics is really the study of the human journey. And it answers a lot of questions about why things happen in life and why things are the way they are and what is the point of all of that once you start to understand these things. So it's very, very enlightening. And the other thing that I've said before is that for some reason, there's a lot of people that have developed this idea that the study of energetics runs contrary to religion. And as you guys know, I'm actually a very religious Christian, but energetics doesn't bother me and it doesn't threaten my religion at all. In fact, it very much clarifies and enhances it. So if you're religious, if you're not religious, you can still benefit from energetics. I do think that sometimes early on, it was just one of those things where there was a lot of stories circulated in the 70s and 80s of people using energetics in a negative way. And for the most part, I think a lot of them were just stories, with some exceptions, because it's actually somewhat difficult to use energetics to do harm to other people. I mean, I'm sure there are people who have figured it out because we all know that there are those people in the world, right? But for the most part, you actually have to work to find a negative use for energetics. It's actually pretty hard. Now, you certainly could do harm more to yourself than to other people if you so chose, but that's kind of a different issue. So that, it's something that I've talked about on the podcast before. I think it is perfectly okay to pray and also to meditate. I mean, in a lot of ways, they're very similar things, and there are some nuanced differences. So you can do both, or you can think of them as the same thing, but really, they're all trying to achieve the same goal. And so that's why I say that it has actually enhanced my religion and helped me understand things before that I did not understand. But what does all of this have to do with writing? Energetics, again, is the study of energy. And you can learn to manipulate that energy in a good way to help yourself, to give yourself some advantages. So the way in which energetics helps you, first of all, when it comes to your storytelling, it will help you understand. I just said a moment ago that energetics is really the study of the human journey. And I very often say that about stories too. Stories are, to use Vogler's definition, it is a metaphor for a journey that leads to change. And I would add to that it leads to the change of a human being. Now, I'm sure there are some of you who are going to object and talk about how very often the characters in stories are not human beings. We might have stories where the character is a mouse, or even just species other than human, like vampire or shifter or dragon or whatever. But in those cases, we are imbuing them with human characteristics, right? So we are giving them higher reasoning power, and things like mice and even theoretically dragons, because they are more animal than human, wouldn't have higher reasoning power. But the reason we do that is because at the end of the day, we are still telling stories about a human journey. But as Vogler says, it is often a metaphor, therefore, metaphorically, sometimes the characters are not actually human, and that's perfectly okay. But my point is, energetics is the study of the human journey, and stories are metaphors for very specific human journeys. So storytelling-wise, energetics and storytelling go hand in hand far more than I ever could have realized before I started actually studying it myself. I am big on the psychology of the character journey, and I like to call that transformational human psychology, or the human template for storytelling. But it's just a metaphor for the journey that every human being goes through, right? And energetics will help you understand that more. So energetics, understanding what it is, learning more about it, can very much help you in your storytelling. It will help you understand that human journey all the more so that you can communicate it better in your stories. So that's one way. The other ways have more to do with you as an author and to give yourself an advantage when it comes to actually producing your story. So energetics can help you by studying the subconscious mind, by learning how to tap into the subconscious mind, because our emotions and our creativity are both housed in the subconscious mind. And those two things, they are two different things, but at the same time, they are so intricately connected that I almost don't think we can disconnect them from each other, even if they are two separate things. Creativity gives rise to emotion. Emotion gives rise to creativity. I mean, it's just a very self-fulfilling prophecy, and all of that is housed in the subconscious mind. So if you learn about energetics and how to intentionally tap into that creativity, it makes you more creative. It makes it easier for you to solve story problems. You'll never deal as much with block or indecision. You can ask your subconscious questions and it will answer you. Okay, you can get answers that way. And it is all coming from you. But most people don't do that. They use their conscious mind to try and force answers to come, and that's how they get blocked. But if you can speak to, think of it as like the embodiment of your creativity, and it needs to be something that will serve you and serve your stories, you will come up with a solution. You will come up with the right answer. But you just got to know how to tap into it like that, right? So it can help you get past block. It can help you be more creative. It'll help you write your soul stories because you're tapping into the story that your soul has to tell and not trying to force an idea you have into a template on the, logical level. It can help you up-level your word count, okay? I know that there are people out there who say, I can only write this many words. That's all I have in me. I can't do anymore. And I believe you. That is what you clearly believe and what you do. So, I don't think you're lying or anything like that. But it's also a matter of relying on your creative mind to help you up-level that word count. And I would go ahead and guess that anyone who has given up on up-leveling their word count has never attempted to use the subconscious mind to do it, okay? If they had, they would have been able to up-level that word count. So the way it works is that you believe you can only write so many words. And chances are you believe that because that's just what you've always written. And when you've tried to write more, it hasn't worked. Okay, so I understand that. But the other thing you might have done is maybe you've tried to write more. Maybe you even did successfully write more at one point, but you just did it the one time and you were so burnt out afterward that you knew you couldn't do that again. Well, I can promise you that that is a symptom of trying to force it from the logical standpoint, okay? Your energy is not in alignment to write more words, therefore it is really, really hard to write more words. But if you just study energetics a little bit and get your energy into alignment, suddenly it becomes fairly easy and fairly natural to write more words. So it's just a matter of using energetics to help you do these things, okay? So we have, it helps you in your storytelling, it helps you in your creativity, it helps you up-level your word count if that's something that you're interested in. And the other way is that in terms, I want to say it helps you in your marketing, but it's a little bit adjacent to that. So you can certainly use it to help you in your marketing in the same way you use it to help you in your story. Just if you understand marketing better, if you understand emotional marketing, then what you say in your marketing becomes more effective at hooking readers and getting them to buy your book. So there is that. But it's very similar to what I've already talked about. The real way that it helps you, and it's not so much in your marketing as in your sales, even though I know those sound like the same thing, is that it has to do with abundance, right? Financial abundance is a big part of energetics. And I can tell you from experience that in the early days when I was writing and only had a handful of books out, I very rarely made good sales. And that's because my mindset was pretty much in the toilet. I didn't realize that it was, but I can remember doing Amazon ads back in the day, and I wasn't working a regular 9-to-5 job, so I was not bringing in a whole lot of money. And I would do Amazon ads for my books, and I actually did make them profitable. So it was like I would spend $20 and make $50 or something like that. So they were profitable, but I couldn't afford to spend very much. And I would think about it, and then I would go, okay, if I can just, scale this a little bit, but for whatever reason, I would try and it wouldn't work, and I would have to turn off the ads, and then I didn't have the money to pay for them, and I eventually did, but it would take me like 3 weeks just to get the money to pay for my Amazon ad balance, and it was just this vicious cycle, right? And I couldn't imagine in my mind a scenario where I actually had enough money to put into ads that would make my books sell at a rate that would allow me to live on my royalties. Okay, I couldn't imagine that scenario. And that's exactly why I was having trouble. Because my mindset was not where it needed to be. My energetics were all out of whack, and I was not in energetic alignment with being able to support myself on my royalties. Okay, I was not in energetic alignment with the amount of money that I wanted to make. And that is a very, very real thing. Okay, if you are not in energetic alignment to have abundance in your life, you will not have abundance in your life. And look at most of society, right? Most people are hurting for money on some level. Of course, you have people that make different levels of income, but very often you hear people talk about how even if someone is making, say you have someone who's making $100,000 a year, their debts and their lifestyle and the things that they have to pay for every month, they're still really low on money, and then of course you have people who are making significantly less than that are more like, poverty level or anywhere in between, and they're going through the same thing. And how is that possible that someone who makes $100,000 a year is having the same problems as someone making $30,000 a year, and they're not exactly the same problems, but in the sense that both of them are hurting for money to cover their expenses. And you could go into, the wealthier person needs to spend less and then they'd be fine and yada, yada. There's a lot of things you could talk about, of course, but really it comes down to a poverty mindset. And even people who manage to make more money very often can't break out of it. And that's a problem. And the very few people who do tend to be very, very successful. And people say, how are they doing that? I wish I could do that. And we see that so often here in the author space, right? We do know, we don't have exact numbers because Amazon keeps everything very close to the chest, but we know that there are quite a few authors that are making really good money on Amazon, okay? Like maybe as much or as many as like 100 of them, 100, maybe in the hundreds of authors, are making $1 million a year on Amazon. And I got that statistic a few years ago. It may have increased since then. But that's kind of the high tier, right? Somewhere between that number and somewhere in the thousands of authors are making six figures, okay? And that means quite a few authors are making somewhere between like 50,000 and 100,000. And even that is a really good living, okay? So we know that it's possible to do. But then, you know, when we write a book and feel like we put so much work into it and pop it up on Amazon or, you know, other retailers and it doesn't sell very well, we go, how are those authors doing it? You know, I don't understand how they're doing that. Well, again, there's a lot of variables, so we can't nail it down to just one thing. It could be that you've got a little ways to go to spruce up your writing, right? It could be that you're not completely where you need to be in terms of metadata, meaning your cover isn't quite where it needs to be for the genre, or your blurb could use a little bit of work or something like that. But at the end of the day, we also know that there are some books that are not very well written or that do not have the best covers, and they still sell pretty darn well. And so then that makes us just want to throw our hands up in the air and say, okay, I don't get it. My book is so much better written than this person's book, and they're selling 100,000 copies and I sold 4. Why is that happening, right? I can almost guarantee you that all other things being equal, assuming that you have most of the other things dialed in that we know you need to have, if there is a difference between what you're selling and what someone else is selling, it is an energetic difference, okay? You need to get yourself aligned energetically with the amount of money that you want to make from your writing. And once you do that, you will start to see books move. Is it work? Yes. Energetics, because they are an invisible element in our lives, are one of the hardest things to get a handle on for most people. There's some people that do it naturally, and we hate them a little bit. Not really. But the authors that sell a lot of books, yes, they are doing everything else right. I'm not saying they aren't. Yes, they are working hard. I'm not saying they aren't. But literally, they would not be having the success they are having, no matter how good their book was, if they were not energetically aligned to that result. So you have to understand that human beings are 100% physical and 100% spiritual. And I use spiritual as an alternative to energetics. Okay, energetic, spiritual, subconscious, they all pretty much mean the same thing. So if we are 100% physical and 100% spiritual, we need 100% of both, right? So when you look at a really successful author, someone who is selling 6 figures a year, yes, they must be doing everything right on the physical side of things, meaning their writing is dialed in, their editing is good, their cover is good, because if they weren't doing those things, then the book wouldn't sell. That's very true. But on the flip side, they also have to be doing everything right energetically, because if they weren't, their book would not sell no matter how good it is. We need 100% of both. And this is the missing element for so many authors out there who say, I have the story, I know it's well written, the people who do read it, I get really good reviews, I've messed with my cover and my blurb until I'm sure that they are good. Why is it still not selling? Well, if you have a mindset where you can't imagine actually getting sales, or you're constantly afraid that you won't get sales, then that is what you're attracting to you energetically. So energetics is just, it's really important for life in general, for any kind of success, you know, whether it's in the fiction author realm or something else. And that's what I've learned over the past few years and why I've embraced it so passionately. But, you know, when it comes to in our writing, there are very specific ways that it can be helpful to us. Now, the first few that I talked about, which is giving you a leg up in your storytelling, helping you uplevel your word count, helping you tap into your creativity, those are all things that are just really, really helpful. And they do make a big difference when it comes to writing your story, creating your story, all of that. But I would also say that energetics is vitally important when it comes to sales, because you have to keep your mindset where it needs to be if you want to be financially successful. I heard a coach talk about this, and understand he was somebody who sells coaching programs that are much, much more expensive than our books are. I mean, we're talking his coaching programs are like $10,000 a pop, right? So that's way more than we're making on a single unit of our books. But he was talking about how he has to guard his mindset so carefully. He cannot listen to or watch or engage in anything that's negative, because the amount of money he makes in his business is directly proportional to where his mindset is. And if his mindset slips, his revenue slips. So he has to guard his mindset. And people say, "Oh, you're such a prude. You could just do this one thing." And he's going, "No, I'm running like an 8-figure business, so I cannot do that one thing, or my business is going to tank." Now, it may not be quite that dramatic for most of us because we have smaller items for sale, right? But at the same time, because we are making less per unit, we have to sell in bulk, which means we have to have high numbers. Even though our prices are low, our numbers need to be high. And that still takes a particular mindset that you need to cultivate. So, you guys, I really didn't have a plan for this podcast today. I just wanted to riff on this a little bit because I was thinking about it this week. And I just want you to really take that into account. I am someone who is very much an advocate for energetics. I do it all the time now. I do it every day, and it's become a huge part of my writing. And I have seen a lot of success because I've embraced that. So, you might be saying, okay, well, what should I do to get started? The best thing you can do to get started is just to educate yourself on it. If you're looking for books, I would recommend Joe Dispenza. He was one of the first that I read who talked about it. Learn how to meditate. I mean, sometimes even that can be really difficult because not everybody explains what it is or how to do it very well. When I teach meditation, I always make sure to tell them exactly what they should be doing, exactly what they should be thinking, because when I got into it, I remember I would listen to people talk about meditating, and I was like, I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what you want me to do right now, and so it's not always totally clear. But I like Joe Dispenza. He's very well known in his space, but he gives you a step-by-step what to do to meditate, and that was so helpful to me, and it was so clear. And actually, once I started doing some of his meditative processes, that's when things really started to shift for me. So I will always be an advocate of him. So I would just tell you to start there. Learn to meditate. Learn to regulate your nervous system, which just means being calm no matter what you do. So have you ever had the experience where you go to do something and you're just like terrified to do it? So we're not talking about facing down a lion or anything. We're talking about like you're going to start your first book ad and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to start this ad and it's going to take money, and you're just like shaky and you're so scared and you need to do it and you want to do it, but you're just freaking out about it internally. Okay. That is the opposite of regulating your nervous system. If you're in that energy all the time, you're going to have a hard time being successful, okay? And that's where most authors are, because it is scary. It is scary to put our work out there at all to begin with. We think we're going to be judged for it, and it is scary to give someone like Facebook or Amazon permission to take our money in order to try and sell our books. It's always a little bit daunting at the beginning, and I've been there. I understand. But regulating your nervous system just means figuring out how to keep yourself very calm and very relaxed as you do that, because I'm telling you right now, a regulated nervous system will bring success, and a non-regulated nervous system will tank your book every time. Okay, so just start to educate yourself on it, read up on it, find a way to start meditating and finding ways to regulate your nervous system so that you're not constantly nervous and living from a place of anxiety and fear and agitation. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have for you today. I just want you guys to start considering this and thinking about energetics. If you're already doing it, great, more power to you. I'm right there with you. And if you're not, just consider maybe studying it some more, reading up on it, maybe practicing it a little bit just to see if you like it and to see if it helps you. Meanwhile, if you want more help on this is something that I teach inside the membership. So the tiers of my membership in Legendary Fiction Forge are, number one is the Storycraft, in which I teach you everything that I've talked about, transformational human psychology, how to infuse your story with emotion using 3 levels of emotion, being very intentional about your storytelling, helping the reader connect with it, all of those things, okay? So the story craft is one tier. Another tier is the energetics. I'm going to teach you, I eventually will get to giving you a lot in the study of energetics in like the universal laws and things like that. But as you get started, there's meditations in there that you can do. And I teach you how to use meditative practices to bust through block and to help you write your story in very specific step-by-step ways. And then the other tier, of course, is marketing. It's emotional marketing. And then I also have, kind of as a bonus, it's not one of the foundational tiers of the membership, but I do have editing for passive voice in there. So that you can create a really clean manuscript and one that doesn't sound amateurish, that sounds very professional. People talk about editing all the time, but for some reason, hardly anyone ever talks about editing for passive voice. And in my opinion, it's not the most important type of editing. I think developmental editing for your story is the most important type of editing, but editing for passive voice is a close second. And nobody ever talks about that. So I also do teach you how to identify and eradicate passive voice very easily using just very straightforward techniques. So anyway, all of that is in the membership. If you would like to join us, if you would like to check it out, Legendary Fiction Forge, we've got a great group of authors in there. And if you want a foundation in energetics, especially as pertains to your writing, you will get that within the membership too. All right. So that is what I have for you today. I hope that that was helpful and informative a little bit, and that if you are not currently doing it, that you will consider taking up an energetic practice in order to really focus your life and focus on your goals and help yourself get to success in any area of your life a little bit easier, but of course, especially in your fiction writing success. So thanks for being here today, guys. Thanks for listening to me riff for a little bit. And I hope you have a wonderful week of writing and that you get done what you set the intention of getting done. I will manifest that for you so that you feel productive and satisfied with the rate of work that you are doing. All right. And I cannot wait to find out what beautiful, amazing, epic stories your brain comes up with. All right. I will be back next week with more, and I will see you then. Bye, guys.